So now back inside the courtroom, the testimony of Pecker is still being read back to the jurors. A couple of interesting notes from Turley, also Maria. Here we go. Pecker said he believed the story on McDougal would be embarrassing, quote, both to himself and to his campaign. Turley adds that's interesting because it shows a dual interest in avoiding such stories, one against Trump and one against the campaign. Also, Turley adds that Pecker says Trump said, I normally do not buy stories because they always come out. It kind of wasn't wrong about about that issue in the end. Maria adds jurors again appear to be paying close attention, and why not? They've been there for more than a month. And then there's this note about Cohen talking to Pecker, saying that rip up the agreement. Cohen was, quote, screaming at Pecker and said that I am the lawyer and can't understand why he is concerned. So these jurors now, 7 men and 5 women, believe that this portion of the trial, at the moment anyway, is critical. Kayleigh McEnany, Carl Rove joins Dana and me here on the set. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Care to take a crack?
I'm thoroughly confused, but I guess most of America is now. This is going to rivet us until it's resolved, but it is complicated. I'm still trying to figure out. The Federal Election Commission took a look at this and said, we're not doing anything. The Biden Department of Justice looked at it and said, we're not doing anything. Bragg's predecessor as the Democratic DA of Manhattan said, I'm taking a pass at it. And how does a case that starts with supposedly a federal election law violation end up being governed by a New York law regarding business records? I'm still confused.
Kayleigh, you know what really bothers me about it too, just in the bigger scheme of things, is that this case of the 4 against President Trump, that if we're thinking of 4, this case, by most Democrats' standpoint, was considered the weakest of the 4. The other 3 are now either postponed or on hold, and they're not going to happen before the election. But the Democrats wanted so much to be able to say, convicted felon Donald Trump, the opponent of Joe Biden, that now you have some of them saying, obviously he's guilty. Like, it rained overnight, so therefore we know that he's guilty. I mean, that, to me, it's difficult for me to understand how they stomach that themselves and look themselves in the face, you know, in the mirror and say, I can believe in that, when they're also at the same time talking about the lack of trust in institutions.
That's a fantastic point. When this indictment came out in April of 23, I have a running list of left-leaning legal commentators who dismiss this out of hand. Because to your point, the other 3 cases were in the pot. Now they're not. They're pushed after the election date. New York Times did an analysis. Never before in the history of state New York election law has it been brought against a federal campaign. First time, so novel legal theory. Now all of a sudden you have what I would say intellectually dishonest commentators reversing their point of view because they want what I think the Biden campaign wants, is that convicted felon label. I think it is a very ill-conceived plan, however, for the Biden campaign to try to jump on this, to try to do a victory dance in the event of a guilty verdict. The Biden directive that was initially sent out was the White House, as it includes the campaign, even though they're separate, Biden world stays away from the cases. I think that was a smart move. I would not touch this with a 10-foot pole, but they are touching it.
They're going to touch it, and the Washington Post editorial board editorializes today and agrees with you that they shouldn't do it.
Yep.
Carl, you write in the Wall Street Journal about the comical aspect of a lot of this. And your jumping off point is Robert De Niro's appearance that we watched together on America's Newsroom earlier in the week. But it did not stop there.
Yeah.
American politics have gone in a direction that folks like you have observed for a long time would not even predict, I believe.
Yeah, look, who's going to decide this election? A small group of undecided voters and a somewhat larger group of people who are weakly linked to their choice and are weakly linked because they prefer to have 2 other choices than the ones they've got. So why are both campaigns, take De Niro, speaking to the hardest core of the hardcore, the base of the base, with this outlandish rhetoric that nobody who's up for grabs in this election is going to believe? Do we really believe, as De Niro said, that Donald Trump wants to destroy New York City, wants to destroy America, and wants to destroy the world? Really? It's one thing to say his policies are going to hurt the city, the country, the world, but to say he is a mad villain who wants to blow up the world. You know, he's sitting in a volcano someplace talking about lasers, and I mean, it's just absurd. Similarly, Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that boilerplate language that's normally in a federal search warrant meant that Joe Biden wanted to assassinate Donald Trump during the search of Mar-a-Lago, and that the FBI was ready to take fire and take aim and fire away. I mean, please, that was so outlandish that the Russians picked it up, and she is a star on Russian TV because they want to use that bit of misinformation to paint us in a wrong fashion. So when the winner of this election is going to be the campaign that sort of figures out that it's better to talk about, in the case of Trump, immigration, the problem at the border, inflation, what's happening in our cities, the out-of-control spending.
Fires around the world.
Woke, and be specific about those being problems and get rid of all this other sort of extraneous stuff that is only designed to inflame the people who are already revved up and ready to go for their respective candidates.
Final thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Look, there was a Quinnipiac poll on what are you closely following news about. You know what was at the top of that was 62%, inflation, then came immigration, then came election legitimacy, then abortion. At the very bottom was the Trump trial at 42%. So 20% fewer following the Trump trial than inflation. If I'm Trump, let's say there's a conviction. I would say, look, 12 people had their say on a Stormy Daniels payment. I want to have a discussion about your grocery bill payment, your mortgage payment, your gas payment. Turn this on its head. 12 people came to a verdict, but the real verdict will be decided by 200 million people, whatever the universe of voters is, on November 5th, 2024. To Carl's point, don't talk to the edges, talk to the suburban voter, talk to the woman, talk to the independent voter in the middle, and you can prevail.
One thing I'll say, she's got focus. She's been on this, and I'm following
women.
you. That's it. She's on top of it. All right, thank you both.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.